I wrote a book called Explanations and Corrections in the Gospel of Luke, and I'm going to read from a section called Gentiles and Wild Beasts that Devour and Trample. The purpose is to show that it was reasonable for Luke to interpret the abomination of desolation as Roman armies, and also to show that it's reasonable to regard the fourth wild beast of Daniel 7 as Gentile armies. Wild beasts that tread vegetation underfoot and devastate land symbolize Gentile armies in Isaiah 5 and Psalm 80, not just in Daniel 7 and Mark 13. The Jews believed that the boar out of the wood of Psalm 80:13 or 79:14 Douay represented the fourth beast of Daniel 7 and also the Roman Empire. Some Latin writers mention this. Jerome's commentary on Daniel 7:7 says, and I translated that, I am very surprised that even though he reckoned the lioness and the bear and the leopard as three kingdoms, he didn't compare the Roman kingdom to any beast, unless perhaps he left the name of the beast unstated in order to make the beast fear-inspiring, so that whatever we have thought very fierce among beasts, we would understand that as the Romans. That which was left unstated here, the Hebrews think was stated in the Psalms. The boar out of the wood laid it waste, and a singular wild beast devoured it. Jerome said that the boar out of the wood of the Psalm was the Roman army in his commentary on Isaiah 27:10, and I translated that too. There the calf will feed the Roman army, concerning which it was also said in another passage, symbolized by the noun boar, the boar out of the wood will lay it waste, and a singular wild beast hath devoured it. So Jerome is saying that the calf in Isaiah 27:10 is the Roman army, just like the boar out of the wood in Psalm 79:14 Vulgate and Douay, or Psalm 80 in Protestant Bibles. Pescasius Radbertus also wrote that the boar out of the wood was Exercitus Romanorum sub Tito et Vespasiano, that is, the army of the Romans under Titus and Vespasian. Notice that Radbertus and also Jerome in his commentary on Isaiah said that the boar was the Roman army, not the Roman Empire or a Roman king. Remember that Luke said that the abomination of desolation was armies, not a king or kingdom. And I say in this book that the abomination of desolation was a beast, an abominable, desolating beast, namely the fourth beast of Daniel 7. Some reference works, despite teaching that the fourth beast originally referred to the Greeks, acknowledge that the Jews later understood it as Rome. The Jewish Encyclopedia of 1909, in its article on Revelation, I'm going to drop that, skip that, and I'm going to skip the next quotation to save time so I can keep this video shorter. R.H. Charles said that the beast in Revelation 13 was the Roman Empire, and that its description is based on Daniel 7:2-7. After naming numerous ancient sources, he said, from the above survey, therefore, we conclude that from 30 AD onwards, Jewish exegesis universally and Christian exegesis generally took the Roman Empire to be the fourth kingdom of Daniel. Jesus and Luke knew that the fourth beast originally signified the Roman army when the book of Daniel was written. The three references cited above show that Jesus' Jewish audience probably understood him as referring to Rome, not Greece. McClintock and Strong explained how devastating a wild beast can be in a field. Volume 1, 1883, under the entry boar. It is passive while unmolested, but vindictive and fierce when roused. The wild boar roots up the ground in a different manner from the common hog. The one turns up the earth in little spots here and there, the other plows it up like a furrow and does irreparable damage in the cultivated lands of the farmer, destroying the roots of the vine and other plants. The chief abode of the wild boar, says Forbes in his Oriental Memoirs, is in the forests and jungles, but when the grain is nearly ripe, he commits great ravages in the fields and sugar plantations. The powers that subverted the Jewish nation are compared to the wild boar, and the wild beasts of the field, by which the vine is wasted and devoured. The powers that subverted the Jewish nation are compared to the wild boar and the wild beasts of the field, by which the vine is wasted and devoured. And no figure could be more happily chosen. And he refers here to Psalm 80 in the Protestant Bible. That ferocious and destructive animal, not satisfied with devouring the fruit, lacerates and breaks with his sharp tusks the branches of the vine, or with his snout digs it up by the roots and tramples it under his feet. Isaiah 5:5-6 says, "And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, and it shall be eaten up. I will break down the wall thereof, and it shall be trodden down. And I will lay it waste, and it shall not be pruned nor hoed, but there shall come up briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it." I will quote below from a commentary on those verses. It also refers to Psalm 80:12-13, a psalm of Asaph, which uses similar figures. After quoting Deuteronomy 31:17, in which God threatened to forsake Israel and to let the Israelites be devoured if they broke his covenant, McCulloch wrote, "Asaph contemplated the forlorn state of his vineyard, when this threatening received a partial accomplishment, thus complains, Why hast thou broken down her hedges, so that all they which pass by the way do pluck her? The boar out of the wood doth waste it, and the wild beast of the field doth devour it." So that's from the psalm. But McCulloch continued, "It shall be eaten up, and it shall be trodden down." These expressions plainly foretold in what manner the Jewish nation were to be treated by their enemies, some of whom were to be greedily devoured, whilst others should be trampled upon with indignation and trodden down in triumph, as a proof of their subjection to foreign power. And thus it actually came to pass when, on account of their multiplied transgressions, God deprived that people of their defense and exposed them to the hostile attacks of their powerful enemies. The Assyrians fell upon Ephraim, the Babylonians attacked Judah. They laid waste their land, they demolished their fortresses, they burnt their temple, and led them away captive into strange countries until they found in woeful experience what an evil and bitter thing it was that they had forsaken the Lord their God. And afterward, these predictions were more fully verified when the Romans carried devastation through the whole land, and both consumed and trod them down until destruction came upon them to the uttermost. Interestingly, McCulloch thinks Isaiah 5 applies to the Romans, and Jesus might have too. Isaiah didn't specify the animal that would lay waste and tread down God's vineyard, but any farmer would probably have thought first of a boar, because it both eats and treads. Fittingly, McCulloch cited Psalm 80, one of the Psalms of Asaph, which does specify that the boar was one of the animals that devastated God's vineyard. Elsewhere in this book, I explained that in the Bible, Son of Man frequently means man when opposed to other species of animals or angels. You need to understand this to understand Psalm 80, which contrasts boars and wild beasts with God's people, who are also called the Son of Man. This psalm calls foreigners wild beasts and boars, as well as enemies and neighbors. but Israel is in contrast called a human being as well as a flock. This is the same dichotomy of creatures used in Daniel 7. One like a son of man, or resembling a human being, was contrasted with four creatures that look like beasts. Israelites were human beings, but everybody else was a wild animal, an unclean Gentile. McCulloch said above that the boar out of the wood in the Psalm, and also the unnamed beast in Isaiah 5, trampled God's vineyard. And he said that the language was a metaphor for the figurative trampling of Jerusalem by foreign enemies. The Gentiles in Luke 21:24 are the armies mentioned in Luke 21:20. Luke 21:24 says, "And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led captive into all the nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled." An army can indeed tread with their feet, literally or metaphorically, but the words trodden down in Luke 21:24 are probably an allusion to the beast of Daniel 7:23 through 25. People don't fear literal treading by an army. They're afraid of their weapons, but farmers do fear the treading by boars. According to Daniel 7:7, Daniel saw a fourth beast, terrible and powerful, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with its feet. And it was diverse from all the other beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. This beast ate and trampled everything like boars. Even though the comparison would have been suitable, I doubt that the fourth beast looked like a boar. The boar is a good symbol of unclean people, but there's no scriptural necessity that Gentiles always be symbolized by boars. Boars devastate and trample, but the fourth beast in Daniel 7 was described as some different beast that also devastated and trampled. The first three beasts were compared to a lion, or lioness in the Septuagint and Vulgate, a bear and a leopard. I take it that the fourth beast didn't look enough like any beast Daniel had ever seen. If the fourth beast had looked like a boar, Daniel would have said so. And I'm going to skip this quotation to save time. So I don't mean to suggest that Jesus accepted all the opinions that I quoted in this chapter. Jesus believed that the abomination of desolation was the fourth beast and that it was the Roman army. Jesus used a figure of speech from Isaiah 5:30, which I'll get to in a future chapter. But I don't know if Jesus considered Isaiah 5 to have been written about the Roman army, and I don't know how Jesus interpreted the boar out of the wood and the psalm.